Hi everyone, Chris here with a brief announcement before this show gets underway. And unfortunately, it's not a good one. I've decided to put Stoked on hiatus, and this will be the last episode that we produce, at least for the foreseeable future. I don't know how long this hiatus will be. My expectation is that probably once I've sort of regained my passion and enthusiasm for the game. I plan to just play this game to play it and have fun. And I hope to sort of be re-energized about the game. And I expect maybe when we see new missions and new episodes hit the game, that I won't be able to keep myself away. But until that point, there won't be a next week's episode. And I apologize for the confusion because I am leaving this episode 109 intact, so it's a complete set. That way we can just pick right up with episode 110 if we decide to come back. But we do make references to what'll be coming up next week and future episodes. And unfortunately, at this time, those episodes are not planned. You can still send the feedback in that we request, though, because we do want to hear from you. And if we come back for episode 110, we can work that stuff into 110. So it's still worth sending it in. I want to thank all of you for watching, though. I really appreciate those of you who've been watching for a long time. And you guys know out there that this show has gone through transitions, and this may just prove yet to be another transition with a little bit of downtime in between. If we come back, I want to do it with a ton of energy and a ton of passion for this game and really be excited. And I think that's what all of you want too. So I hope that you understand that it's not really anything more than just that, and that you'll be here and you'll check out Jupiter Broadcasting from time to time to see if Stoked does come back. You know, I'll make an announcement in our newsletter too. If you want to sign up for the Jupiter Signal over at bit.ly/Jupiter Signal, I'll make sure that when the show's coming back, we'll put a little bit in there. And I'll also include a little bit in this month's edition about the hiatus of the show. So that might be a good place to get some of that. But there's also just check the site from time to time. I hope we'll be back soon for episode 110. Enjoy 109. And welcome to Stoked, the ultimate Star Trek online podcast. My name is Chris. This is episode 109. Happy 2012 and good morning to all of the fine folks in the jblive.tv chat room. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me this Saturday morning and watching the live stream. And good morning to all of the awesome people over at Deep Space Nine who are partying with me as I do the show over in Quark's Bar. I see some really beautiful dancing, and just before we started the show, it was snowing in there too, so very festive. All right. Well, coming up on the show today, we're going to have a laser-focused episode. I have the good, the bad, and the ugly from our 2011 predictions that I'll roll for you. And I'm going to make some 2012 predictions of my own. I don't have a lot, but I'll get to them in just a minute. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to go into the STF Gear changes that's coming down the road. The Aegis set, the Borg set, also some new sets. All those kinds of things. We'll cover those in math. And then at the end of the show, it's community feedback. Last episode, the J-Man was on, and he asked you, what would you like to see done with Gold Press Latinum in the game? Some of you have sent in your answers, and we'll cover those in community feedback. Now, if the guys in Quarks are ready, and the gals and guys in the jblive.tv chat room are ready, I will give you my 2011 playback, followed by my 2012 predictions. I'll start with the J-Man because he's not here to defend himself. And therefore, I can pick on him with vigor, and he won't be here to defend himself, so I'm safe. Actually, I'm kidding. Really what it is I'll set these up. These predictions were made at the end of December last year. And actually, we had a predictions episode the December before that, too. So I actually spent some time and watched our predictions for the last 2 years. And at this time, it was like December 20th something. It was the last episode we did of 2010. And we were sitting at a point where Season 3 was about to launch. Daniel Stahl had semi-recently taken over the executive producer position, so a lot of things were changing. We were just starting to see the engineering reports. The calendar had been set up for a little while, and so we were seeing like projections of when content would be coming out, and featured episodes were sort of a thing that happened on a reoccurring basis. And so the mindset for the state of the game was a little different than it is today, but I'll touch on that in a bit. Why don't we start with I'll roll one or two of the J-Man's first predictions, which pertain to the Foundry. Now, they're a little off, but I think they might have been apt. Let's take a listen.
My prediction, maybe it's just a hope, but my prediction is that Cryptic will actually step up and assign somebody to be the Foundry community leader out on their site.
That's controversial.
No, on their site. Somebody at Cryptic.
At Cryptic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that actually works for them, that is their point of contact for Foundry PR, for Foundry community
What about
representative.
Now, I'll pause it there because obviously we never saw that materialize. We never saw Cryptic develop a sole responsible member for the Foundry, though we have heard that Daniel Stahl has stepped up. He's returned to Cryptic, and he might be taking some sort of position like that. Jeremy had another Foundry prediction that kind of fit with this one, so I thought I'd go ahead and I'd roll that one too.
Especially as the Foundry continues to get fleshed out, I see even more.
Yeah, because then now the fans are going to do Star Trek stuff.
Yeah,
and they're going to
have demands for new technology and new things that we can do in the game, and we're going to see those made into Cryptic episodes as well, in addition to the Foundry.
Now, I thought that was an interesting prediction because what Jeremy was saying there is that really good Foundry missions may turn into actual like Cryptic-sponsored missions. And we never really saw that materialize. I think at best we saw 1 or 2 featured missions. And now that's not a big deal. That's something we tried to take on here at STOked ourselves with the Foundry files, and we will continue to take on. But looking back at this now, one of the things that Jeremy said is the Foundry will steer future content. And that would have been great to have in 2011. If we could have seen the Foundry grow during this period of a lull in new playable mission content, that would have been huge for the community. So unfortunately, while the J-Man was off on this prediction, it didn't quite materialize. I don't think he was wrong. I think that was probably a pretty big missed opportunity for 2011. Circumstances out of their control and things like that. Now, I have one that I think I got. Well, the predictions that I have here, I think I'm right on all of my predictions. and honestly, it's because I kept them semi-vague-ish. Well, I'll play them for you. You'll see. But also, for a long time now, this sounds kind of funny, but I've been an IT contractor, and one of the number one jobs for a successful IT contractor is to come in, analyze a business, find what's not working correctly, even if it's not a technology issue, and help them implement a solution to fix it. And so that is a perspective that I've taken a look at businesses now for a long time. And I think maybe that experience that I have in that field has helped me make some of these predictions, because I'm not happy that my predictions turned out to be right. I'll put it that way. But here, I will play the prediction that when I made this prediction, I was specifically thinking Daniel Stahl. Every time I say developers, replace developers with Daniel Stahl's name or something like that. And unfortunately, I was right. That's got to be my concern for 2011 is team burnout, because my prediction is I think we're going to see a slowdown for Stowe at maybe mid 2011
in terms of content production.
In terms of just overall, eventually the game's going to reach a stabilization and feature improvement standpoint more and more. So I trimmed that down a little bit, but my main concern there was developer burnout and content production slowdown, which I think everyone would probably agree with that. It's one of these predictions that I wish I wasn't right about. I'll play my last prediction that I clipped for 2012, which obviously is probably pretty right. Figure if you go free to play, there's a lot of revenue opportunities there, but there's gonna have to be a huge cost during the transition.
Yeah,
it could even be like who knows what that window of time where you're probably losing money, and right now they're making money.
Right.
And as soon as they start losing money or just not making as much money, they'll probably talk about it as a way to continue to boost revenue. But right now they can milk that for a little bit and help that bottom line so they can absorb it later on.
See, and that's one of the reasons that I don't see 2011 being a time to announce that. I think that the game continues to get stronger.
Right. What's its main challenge in 2011 going to be? The Old Republic.
Right.
And I was just thinking, if the Old Republic hits and it hits big, you could see a 6-month Stowe. All right, I think we might be talking free to play in 2012. So there you go. I'll just play those clips. I trimmed that down because what was great, and I should just to rib the J-Man, I should include it, but followed that was a nice healthy argument between the J-Man and I where he was quite convinced they wouldn't be going free to play. Who would have known that later on in that year, he would actually go to work for Cryptic, and we'd be sitting here and we're at the transition of free to play right now. So I'll play those clips. There's a few more. If you want to see all of our predictions, you can go over and watch STOked episode 64. I'll try to put a link in the show notes. One of the other things that was interesting about that episode is we talked a lot about the issues that happened in 2010. And it is interesting now to go back and watch those things and see how so much has changed since 2010, but yet some of the same arguments are actually still there. Now, I got some news I want to get into, but I thought I'd lay just a couple of 2012 predictions on you. I haven't decided which ones I want to share with you because I don't want to come on the show and be negative all the time. You know me, we play this game for fun. You guys watch this show to have fun playing the game, so I don't want to come on here and be negative about my predictions. But I honestly feel that 2012 is a make it or break it year in a lot of different ways. But primarily, it's not enough of a break it year for Cryptic. I don't know what in the grand scheme of things is the fallout if free-to-play isn't a successful launch. I don't have a clear picture of what the repercussions are for Cryptic at a staff level. Will they just get shuffled around to other jobs and new content? What is at the end of the day, what is the instinctive reason for them to continue to fight for success? And I don't know if I've locked onto it yet, but I'll just leave. So that's one of the things I'm considering. So I will just leave it at this. 2012, I believe, will be a make it or break it year for Cryptic in several ways. We had a news announcement from Stephen D'Angelo, who expressed that we could likely expect to see about two, I think he said, 2 featured episodes a season, and that could mean that there's somewhere between 9 and 13 episodes in those different featured sets. So absolutely less content than we were originally expecting. But I would lean on my 2011 prediction here. If the Foundry can be brought up to snuff, and if they can support the Foundry, that won't matter as much. And Cryptic, so far, hasn't had the opportunity to nurture the Foundry in the way that it needs to be nurtured. And in 2012, you will see the community that is struggling now, that is barely hanging on. You will either see them completely dissolve away, or you will see Cryptic invest in the Foundry, and that community will go stronger. And I believe in the long-term success of this game, with all of the other competition that's out there, with the fact that this is now a free game, and the number one thing a free game needs is stuff for people to do, the Foundry seems to be the only scalable solution to offer ongoing gameplay to free-to-play players. There just does not seem to be the content level production coming out of Cryptic for new playable missions, and I'm talking new missions with new scenes we've never seen before, new stories I'm not talking about remastered, I'm not talking about ground invasions that we do on Saturdays, I'm talking about new worlds, new civilizations, all that kind of stuff. Only the Foundry can deliver to the appetite level that the community has, and now that the game is going free to play, that appetite is even hungrier. Now, we know that Stahl has stepped into the Foundry position. I have concerns with that. Daniel Stahl has to now realize that the game is once again, in a lot of ways, riding on his shoulders. He stepped out of the executive producer position and has now stepped in to another position that probably, on the outset of things, seemed like it might not be so bad. He could focus and win on something, but I'll be honest. If the Foundry in its execution is screwed up, I don't see 2012 being a good year for Stowe. And it pains me, as somebody in at least a loose way is attached to this title, for this show, and thus for my business. It scares me to say that. I don't want to say that. And we've seen Stahl in action before, and I have mad respect for everybody down at Cryptic, but especially for Dan Stahl. But he's been in the hot seat before, and he left. And now he's back in a whole nother hot seat again. And I'm afraid it's a seat that they don't even realize is getting hot. If you read through the forums in this last 2 weeks, you will see universal outcries from the community for Cryptic to take awesome Foundry missions and convert them into official Cryptic missions. Now, I don't know what that means, but I predict for 2012, you'll see something like that shake out. Maybe it'll be more like the featured episodes again, where they just featured and spotlighted a few Foundry missions. I sincerely hope it's more than that. I'd like to see some sort of wrapper where we have the daily wrapper and things like that, but I'd like to see more. They need this to encourage content creation. And so many people are saying, why don't you just assign 1 or 2 developers to just play in the Foundry and create missions? Because obviously that's doable. Why aren't you guys doing that? And you know what? The first 10 times I read that, I thought, these players don't have any idea how business works or how game development works. They can't believe they're even suggesting that. But I take that back. Sitting here now, why can't it be done? There's no reason it can't be done. Why couldn't somebody at Cryptic be helping make Foundry content or stepping up to the next level? Now, I've talked with Zero and other people down there who are incredibly passionate about the Foundry, and I think if they had it their way, we'd see a lot more attention. I want to reach out to those people in Cryptic who do feel passionate about the Foundry and tell you your passion is justified because it is going to be the survival of this game. 10 episodes in a year, maybe 20 episodes in a year, at best, that's rough. That's really rough. The Foundry has to fill that gap. And if Cryptic doesn't identify that, my prediction for 2012 is it will be the downslide of the game. And I know that's crazy to say when free-to-play is just opening, but I've thought about it a bit, and I believe some of the initial players that will hop on to free-to-play will be just the people that have been already enabled today, and that is old accounts. The accounts that are now silver, people that logged in once before, like Brian, who used to be on STOked, who is coming back for the Linux Action Show on Sunday, so tune in for that if you miss Brian. Guys like him, they're already a number in the system, and they're going to come in, and they will find that there's only so much content to play through, and they're going to stop. And I don't know if it will spread much beyond that. I'm hopeful because I see so many emails and so many comments in our shows about people that are waiting to play. I'm hopeful. But the reality is they're going to hit a wall. You level faster now than you've ever leveled at any point in the game. There's XP boosts in the C-store. So there's other ways to do that so that you can level even faster than when this game was launched. Okay? It is now possible to level faster. That means you will burn through content faster. And the Foundry is the only thing that can fix that. I'm done. I'm getting off my soapbox. But I ran through the 2011 predictions, and so many of them were tied to the importance of the Foundry. And I realized none of my feelings about any of that have changed. It's just as critical today. No. It is more critical today. It is so much more critical. Imagine if we had a healthy Foundry for the last 8 months. And we've had an anemic Foundry. Content's been there. We've featured some great episodes in Foundry files. It's been there. Imagine if you knew that every few days you logged in, there would be a new epic Foundry mission. The fact that we haven't had a featured episode since the beginning or middle of last year, whatever it was, would be much more relevant. So I would say that for my weather stick to predict at the end of 2012, assuming we're all still here and the world hasn't ended, you will be able to gauge how healthy Star Trek Online is based on how healthy the Foundry is. Because it is currently the only feature that all the other big competition doesn't have. All the other big competition has more voiced over dialogue, has more missions to play, has all of these other things. And what Stephen D'Angelo came out and said is that they don't have any intention of keeping up with the competition. That's fine. You just have to play a different game now. And you have to acknowledge that you're playing a different game. And I think I'll make my last 2012 prediction. Well, let me go over my list, see if there's anything else. But I mentioned Stephen D'Angelo. We know he's a temporary executive producer there at Cryptic. And I like the guy. I've met the guy. My impression of Stephen D'Angelo is intelligent, thoughtful, and attention to detail. Those are 3 really great traits to have an executive producer. But they're missing that little bit of enthusiasm that gets the community really going, and that sort of seeps some vision. You know, when I hear D'Angelo talk, I hear pragmatism, I hear sticking to a schedule, and I hear setting expectations correctly. And those are all good things to hear. I don't get excited, I don't look forward to the future, and I'm always let down. Those are 3 really bad things to have in an executive producer. That's probably why he's temporary. So we'll probably see in 2012 the swap out of D'Angelo, and I hope the person who replaces him is able to communicate the passion, because you know D'Angelo, he's been with this game for so long, you know he has passion for the game, but his personality type is probably just not the type that oozes it, sort of like Stahl would do. When Stahl would come on the air, he would flip on a switch, and he would ooze enthusiasm through the Skype speaker. You could hear it. And it was reflected in the way we looked at the game. Now the game, so that way expectations are set properly, has sort of become more opaque, a little harder to see through. We don't really know what's coming down the road. You see it in the forums. People don't understand what's going on. And I think that will probably reach a boiling point, and we will see them swap him out with somebody. And I hope that new executive producer only has 3 things to say when he comes on the air. Content, content, content. If that happens, we could be in a really good position. Additionally, if Cryptic is able to continue to staff up, potentially hire more writers, I would love... Peregrine Falcon, one of the members of our Jupiter Force, reminded me earlier today that one of the things Brian said after his first impression of the game was, would you buy a novel from the person who wrote Stowe's storylines? As in, if you went to the store and you picked up the Star Trek book and you knew the only thing that person had ever written before in their life was the dialogue in Star Trek Online. Would you buy that novel? And I think a lot of people would say no. And it's unfair because the ideas are so good and rich. And the touchstoning on Trek trivia and all that is so great. But at the end of the day, you almost need multiple writers just to have multiple different takes on different stories and have multiple people working on different things. But then you have to have that translate into actual gameplay. And there seems to be a disconnect there as well. And I can say that as somebody who's recorded the voiceovers for the new featured episodes that we still don't have months ago. So you know the writing's in place. The writing team is able to get, or the writing person is able to get whatever she needs done. It's still not being connected to the content. Now, transitions happen, free-to-play things, all that. So we'll see where things go in 2012. That is sort of the unique position we're in now. Things have a possibility of going really great for Star Trek Online. With free-to-play launch, new content coming to the game after that, the new Enterprise is going to be introduced. I predict in 2012, this featured episode will meet the biggest fanfare it's ever seen yet for a featured episode, except for with maybe the first launch. People have been waiting for so long. We know new locations are going to be shown. New maps will be opened up. New ships. New ship interiors. All that stuff. Possibly a voiceover by yours truly and the J-Man. So I think in 2012, the featured episode will have the strongest return, the highest numbers in the game it's seen yet, the best views for this show, all that kind of stuff. So there is the possibility that if all of the pieces are lined up just right, Stowe could have the best year it's had in a long time. And I really hope that's what happens. We've also been sitting in this exact position for the last 2 Decembers. This is a January, but the last 2 Decembers that we did prediction episodes, it felt like we were exactly in this precise moment where something amazing could be about to happen. And it just doesn't happen. Doesn't matter how great the people are, doesn't matter what the intentions are, doesn't matter what the plans were, they just didn't happen. And I don't know if enough has changed to make this time happen any differently. Will we see 2012 be the year things get into gear? Will the inclusion of Perfect World, the change up to free-to-play, the attention to detail, the reworkings of the back-end stuff, will all of that be the pieces this game finally needs to have an awesome runway? I hope so. We'll see, though. And, hopefully I'll be sitting here in December giving you my report. I'll be honest. If the game doesn't do well in 2012, this show won't do well in 2012. And that's just a point that I have to be honest with. The show can't continue if there's not a lot to cover. I'm hopeful the game has something to provide for us so that we can sit here and be really excited about stuff all over again. And I'm sure in the next few weeks that will happen. We're still in the transition period. Free-to-play hasn't quite hit yet. The end of the year slowdown just happened. So things are sort of coming back from a lurch that they've been in. So it's hard to make that clear prediction now. But it is entirely possible that there might not be a 2013 prediction show. Or even a 2012 wrap-up show. We just don't know. I think all of the pieces are in place. But I think all of the pieces have been in place before. But this time it feels a little different. This time it feels a little more real. So we'll see, right? And maybe, maybe we'll have more featured episodes than we expected. Maybe the Foundry stuff will see the spotlight that it deserves. And maybe that community will grow. Could you imagine a passionate, healthy Foundry community, how dedicated they would be to this game? They would be the exact definition of a lifetime player, quite literally. So let's hope. I think I'm placing a lot of my bets on the Foundry for this year. But I think this is my last prediction. Star Wars: The Old Republic will help Star Trek Online realize how did I put it? I said here that Star Wars: The Old Republic will help Stowe find its identity. And that identity is space combat. People will gravitate towards this game for space combat. And we might not see it in this first featured episode because I have a feeling it's already pretty well in progress. But I think in subsequent featured episodes in 2012, they will focus much more on space activities because having another new MMO title to compare yourself to that is a space genre is a healthy thing. And they built that game with a $138 million budget to be a ground combat game. whereas STO is a split with a smaller budget. So a smaller budget, smaller team had to split their resources between space and ground. But everybody pretty much unanimously agrees space is great in this game. I actually think since Season 4, ground is great too. In the following subsequent featured episodes, I believe space will become much more featured as it'll be sort of a commonplace understanding that STO's strength is in space. And that's what the players want too. Well, I think so. I think I'll see that in the featured episodes. I don't know. And I think I'll leave it at that. I'll throw more predictions in the show notes, ones that I didn't feature on air because they felt a little more empty. But one other thing I just want to say that I got right. But so one thing I got wrong from last year was the UGC stuff. I got the Foundry stuff wrong. But I did predict we'd see more voiceovers in missions. Ha! Win. So that's good. As far as that goes. Now, before I move on, I want to say if you're thinking about picking up that new Blu-ray Star Trek set, I mean, you've heard about the Next Generation getting remastered into Blu-ray, right? You've heard about that, haven't you? Well, I've got a link in the show notes. You can actually pre-order. It's like $15, and it is Encounter at Farpoint and like an episode from Season 3 and an episode from Season 5 of the Next Generation. And they're all remastered and digitally redone in Blu-ray, and they look amazing. They look incredible. So I will include a link in the show notes. If you would like to support STOked and Jupiter Broadcasting and you're going to be purchasing that Blu-ray set, if you use the link in the show notes, a portion of your purchase will go to support Jupiter Broadcasting. So thank you for doing that. All right. Now I'm all done with my predictions and my soapbox. What do you say we go talk to Silverwings and get mad? And welcome to Math. It's been a few episodes, but Silverwings is back. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much.
I think we had a Skype hiccup there. Now, one of the things that's pretty popular topic among the viewers out there is anything related to the STFs. And there's going to be some changes coming to STF Gear and even some new sets and stuff, right? Do you want to just sort of kick it off and tell us what you're covering?
Up until recently, we had two main sets, really. The Borg set, which is made up of 4 pieces that you could get. Three sets via the STFs directly, and one was via a mission. And then the Aegis was a craftable set for both factions. For now, though, we have 3 new sets. One is the Mako, which is Fed only, the Klingon Honor Guard, which is KDF only, and the Omega Force, which is a high cross-faction for both of them. And there's been quite a few updates for the last couple of days, so I've been grinding the maths and hopefully be able to give a perspective as to what I believe each set is trying to achieve, and hopefully people will go out there, test them, and be able to give Jeremy, who's in charge of the balancing, some constructive feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I will include the forum thread that he's started for people to give him feedback on the sets in the show notes. So if you get a chance to try these out, and I think both Silver and I are going to suggest that you go over to Tribble and do definitely try these out, and you've got any issues or any ideas, go find the link in the show notes for the forum thread on that. Silver, maybe before you get too far into it,
my show notes.
Okay. Before you get too far into it, I'm going to put my hat on just so that way I don't blow my brain out. I have something to keep it in, keep that brains in. Just I think you're about to.
I don't have a hat.
No, because you've already got all this figured out. I'm just worried about you blowing out my brain muscles. So I just figure I'll keep this in. That way I don't make a mess here on set. So where do you want to start with this?
I'll be gentle.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so let's start with the Borg set first of all. It's definitely a regenerative shield. It's got a high regen but low capacity, and it has resistance to plasma attack. So it's a good Borg-ish resistance set for a shield. And the current changes on Tribble now, the deflector is based on resistance. That's what they're trying to go for. So we've got greater hull, moderate resistance to debuffs such as shield and energy drains, tractor beams, and then a small boost to tractor beam effects, so slow, repel, knockback, and a bit of orc. So it's a very resistance-ish deflector. And the engine is fairly slow, but its bonus is for transwarp speed and sector space. So it's quite handy to get around.
Yeah, that is nice for travel, definitely. That's my favorite thing really about the Borg engine is throwing that sucker on, just getting that slight speed improvement to get across sector space.
The Aegis is a slightly, almost the complete opposite. It's a high-capacity covariant shield, and it has one of the lowest regens, but it also grants a boost to shield power and strength, so it's much more tanky shield. And the engines, it's geared towards speed and defense, so it's more of a defense in an avoidance context rather than actual tanking.
Oh, okay.
It's a one-on-one.
Okay.
And the deflector is pretty much the same. It's mainly based on shield defense. So we have shield strength, repair, resistance to sort of debuffs, and shield power improvement as well. So it's almost the opposite of the Mako set. I think what they're trying to get at is the Mako is much more of what the Aegis isn't, and it's a very defensive, tanky setup. I mean, I did a PvP earlier today, and it was escort versus escort, and the guy just couldn't get through my shields. It was just amazing how resilient these Mako shields are. So it has a lower capacity than the covariant, and a slightly higher regen, but the resilience of it, and also the stacking bonus of having +1 to all power settings when you get attacked, makes it a very durable shield.
Yeah.
Plus it has 20% plasma damage resistance to the shields, which I believe also takes effect even when the shields are down. So sometimes when the Borg have got your shields neutralized, that plasma resistance still takes effect.
That's like one of those things that comes in extremely handy right in your oh crap moment. You know what I mean? So it's like it's extra valuable because it kicks in right when you need it.
And the engine, while it's slower than the Aegis, it doesn't require a high engine output. And also in sector space, you can travel faster than warp 9.9. I believe it should be warp 12 if you don't spec into driver coil, which is one of the sector space abilities, or at least it benefits sector space. And although it's warp 12, I'm led to believe that we're not all going to turn into amphibian beings like Tom Paris and Janeway did.
Oh yeah. Oh wait a minute. Hold on.
So we're still going to be interactive.
Although it's canon because in All Good Things they do like warp 14 or something like that after Riker comes and saves them.
That's if that was worded into STO, that could be really good. Such as, well, hang on, why are we traveling faster than warp 10? It's because we've now perhaps got a new warp scale.
Oh. I would love to,
including trans-warp quantum slipstream.
I would love to kind of see that addressed though in game. Like, why can we all of a sudden? Why have we had this warp 9.99 limit for 30 years of Star Trek? And it would make sense that we could overcome that, just like we've overcome the sound barrier and all that stuff. But how and why? I would love to see that addressed in game.
And it would be canon because it was in, as you say, in All Good Things.
Oh, but the chat room was pointing out that alternate timelines don't work out to be canon, and Voyager took place after All Good Things, where they did turn into lizards. So that would be the most current canon, is that lizards happen when you go above warp 9. So hopefully we won't all beam down. We
could always blame it on some technical mishap.
Yeah. Or like you said, a new scale. Like they alter the scale or something like that. But again, why not just address it in game and kind of have fun with it? Maybe it could be like, you know what? Perfect idea. Sorry, Silverwings, to derail. But that would be a perfect thing to introduce in Starfleet Academy during the trivia stuff where you're running around and reading different stuff. Why not answer some of those things that are different in STO versus canon with some story reasons in Starfleet Academy that you could read about? They don't have to go make some new mission out of it.
You could lead it into sort of a Foundry lore thing, so people can submit their own question and answers.
Oh, dude!
A small amount of...
Look at you tying in the Foundry. Well done, sir. I like that idea. All right, sorry. I'll let you get back on track.
And the final bonus to the engines is that if you get disabled, you've still got some maneuverability. So while I can't see that being particularly useful in STFs, it could still be useful in PvP, particularly escorts, if they still need some kind of maneuverability. And the deflector, it's very defense-orientated, but unlike the Aegis, it's very tanky and resistant. So you've got hull strength, repair, resistance to hold and effects, shield strength, and power transfer rate. So it definitely ties into the resilience of the Mako, whereas the Aegis is more avoidance defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Omega set, I would describe that as a very ambushy hit and run operative
okay.
set. So while the shield is less regenerative than the Borg shield, for each attack you receive, there's a chance of getting a bonus to flight speed and turn rate. So if you get hit, it's much easier to run away, and it's most agile as well, with a greater bonus with engine power. And the deflector is pretty much the same. It's very debuff orientated, so you can detect cloak better and your resistance to sensor debuffs. So like confuse and jam, you've got resistance to slow effects, so you're not going to get held down that easily. And then you've got nice. Improved accuracy and damage to exotic attacks. So for the Klingons especially, they have quite a few exotic attacks, such as theta radiation, which could be very useful at taking stuff down. And then finally, we got the Klingon Honor Guard, which is kind of I think it's been described as sort of a stealth bomber. It's meant to be very high shield capacity, low regen, but if you get hit, there's a 25% chance that the target will suffer 25% accuracy debuff and placate for 1 second. So in PvP, it will become annoying, but in PvE, if a Borg were to target you, there's a 25% chance currently at the moment for the Borg to suddenly lose track of you and start going after someone else. So it's very good at sort of sneaking away after you've done your hit and run. You can run away and the Borg will hit someone else.
But I could see how that probably wouldn't be the ideal set for PvPers.
No, it could be quite annoying. And the deflector is sort of based on strength and offense. So you've got hull strength, damage to exotic attacks, and also a boost to knockback, repel, and slow. As for the set bonuses, quite a few people will have noticed that the Borg set has been nerfed. There's a much lower regen of the actual shields, and I would like to say that I think there has been a small nerf to the Borg set. To put it into perspective, the Borg set is a Mark 10 set, whereas people have been flying around in Mark 11 and soon Mark 12 sets. Plus, it can be quite annoying, particularly in PvP, if you're flying along and you get your target constantly gets 50% hit points time and time again, or if you're in PvE, when you're at 99% hull, it procs, and when you're at 1%, it doesn't proc.
So it's more like bringing it in line with other Mark 10 equipment a little bit. It's making it more of a Mark 10 piece of gear, really.
I believe so. And
it kind of sounds like
the set 3, it still gives it a shield resistance as well. And the tractor beam still does its job of sort of draining the target's power.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's still a good set, and you still get the engine bonus in sector space, so... Right? I mean, that's the number one thing I care about. As long as that's there, as long as they don't nerf that, I'm happy.
And I think it ties in with the Borgs. The orientation is for it to be resistance rather than, because even the Borg ships don't regenerate by 50%.
Right.
So I think it's just to bring it into perspective, the actual set. It is meant to be retrofit gear, so it's not even full Borg tech.
That makes sense. Okay.
As for the Aegis set, you've still got the 5% bonus when you're moving, and the reactive shielding, which kind of builds up a stacking resistance to a particular energy type when you're flying around. So it's still geared towards avoidance, but it has that defensive value attached to it. It's slightly different from the Mako.
Okay.
The Mako set is, again, it's based on resilience. So you have 5% power recharge to your all buff powers, although I haven't noticed that taking effect. So I'm not sure if that's currently broken.
Bouncing back to the Borg set real quick, Major Magna in the chat room has pointed out that at one point, Cryptic, it sounded like they were planning to make Mark 11 versions of the Borg set. So maybe this is kind of making room for that to kind of, have something that the Mark 11 has advantageous over the Mark 10 version. So maybe this is sort of laying the groundwork for more sets. All right.
I think Cryptic have done a great job at making them all balanced, and each set has its own merits, but you still have a benefit to doing a combo. So my escort, I'm planning on having a semi-Aegis, semi-Mako setup. So it's resilient in battle, but it can get away quickly if it wants to.
And what pieces do you think you'd use of it?
Initially, I would go with the Mako shield and I think engine, and then have the the Mako shield and deflector and have the Aegis engine.
Ah.
But there are many combos that people can go for. That's just one suggestion. You could go for the hit and run Omega Force setup instead, or you could go for the resistant Borg. But you got to bear in mind that traditionally escorts are more hit and run rather than stay in the fight and tank.
Any other areas you want to cover on this?
I would recommend for people to go into Tribble, try out the sets with the idea of what each set is trying to do, and give constructive feedback to Jeremy, because he's really looking forward to getting this all tweaked ready for free to play. And if people think that the Borg set has been nerfed too much, say, well, I think it's been nerfed too much. Could we have it improved slightly? And I'm sure he'd be willing to listen to feedback.
Very go. Yeah, that's great. I mean, this is now the opportunity to go in there and make the suggestions you want heard. So you can join in part of that and at least have a voice in it. So then you have every right to complain afterwards. I believe that's how it works. At least that's how my dad explained to me why I should vote. So that way I can complain. It's kind of like the same thing, only with STF Gear sets. Well, dude, I didn't even need the hat. Like, my brain didn't blow up at all. That was totally fine. It was safe. I was brain safe. So I'll let the hair breathe again, and I'll take off the hat. Now, dude, anything else before I wrap us up?
No, I believe that's everything.
All right, Silver. Well, thanks for coming on the show. You know what that means? It's time for community feedback. And welcome to Community Feedback. Now, last time the J-Man was on the show, he popped the question, what should we do with Gold Press Latinum? And a lot of you sent in your answers, and we're going to cover those. Mav's joined me. Welcome back to the show, Mav.
Welcome back. Happy New Year to
Happy New Year,
fans
dude.
and the internets.
Yeah, absolutely. And stick around, because at the end of the segment, we're going to unleash a poll on you to find out what you know what? I'll save it. We have a poll that we'll tell you about at the end of this segment. But Mav, what did people have to say about potential uses for GPL?
Well, we got some interesting feedback from a couple of different people. One kept giving me more and more and more, so I just ran with it.
Good.
First thing I'm going to say is, when you send us an email, give us a handle other than your real name, so that we can put out your name for the show and give you credit for where credit's due.
Yeah, and if you're in the IRC room during the live shows, give us your IRC nick too, so we can give you a shout out live.
Yep. One of the uses for GPL is a use that already exists. It's the hollow emitters, except with a twist. Can they set it up so that you can have hollow emitters for your character?
So like you could maybe project like a different look to you, sort of like when Q transforms you?
Different costumes, right. And as a tweak, they can set it up so that the item looks like the little hollow emitter from the Hollow Doctor from Voyager.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
kind of like cool. where it's got a little programmable database. You figure, okay, this hollow emitter will make you look brain. I guess kind of like the way Q transmogrifies you.
Yeah.
Except now you can use your GPL to purchase that ability.
That'd be cool. Sort of like you can do for your ship, but you want to be able to do it for the ground character.
Right, for your ground character. So say like all of our nice little parties that we have on Deep Space Nine and whatnot, you could actually hollow emitter in and look Borg or look like anything. Hollow
emitter in. I like that. I like that that's a term.
Right, you just hollow emitter in.
Yeah.
But well, you know what? I should save that one for something else. So that's pretty funny. I just dawned on me what I was thinking. Another one was just another. I call them griefer toys, but whatever. Ground fireworks that you can plant and explode, and just like you have your fireworks in space, set it up so that you can set fireworks on the ground.
Kind of like the popper.
Pop into the air. Right. So say if we were doing our when we did our Andoria party, people can set fireworks off in space.
That would be cool.
Another reference to the outfits, like maybe Breen costumes or Cardassian costumes or whatnot, for your characters. Again, a tie back to the the personal hollow emitter. Somebody also had mentioned maybe being able to have a device that you can purchase that will summon an emergency medical hologram, an extra healer temporarily to heal your party while you're out in combat.
Oh my gosh.
I don't quite know how that would work, but I would assume it's possible.
That sounds great.
Say you got a full party and you're just a little shy on a healer and somebody has, you know what, hold on, I'll call my Hollow Doc. Boom,
couldn't you do that now with a boff? Just, get the right boff. because we have to manage the buff, though. That's the problem.
Right. But if you're at a full party or whatever, you know, it's just kind of, it's just something extra you can have as an extra healer. I don't know. I'm not sure how that would quite work.
I rather dig that idea, really.
You know, somebody has it and it's got it. Somebody said with a cooldown of 30 minutes. I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes at max. 30 minutes seems kind of long for an event. But if everybody's got one, then it's like, okay, we'll pop your emergency healer. We can keep going or whatnot. I would assume there'd be a way to destroy that object that the enemy would be able to like, no. And then, you know, but, you know, I'm not sure.
Right.
One of the ones that did catch my attention was why can't we create and I wasn't sure what items could be exchanged, but I was for it, a neutral auction house. Since DS9 is now a neutrality area for both KDF and Federation, why couldn't we have a neutral auction house where items from either faction can be purchased for GPL, or have Ferengi vendors accept GPL as payment for items from either faction? And I thought that was a very interesting concept, because there's stuff where, the Federation has this or Klingon has this. Why, since we're at war and, with Ferengi wanting to make the biggest profit, you would think that they would take any technology they could and sell it to the highest bidder at any price, regardless of whose faction.
That actually was my idea to maybe simmer down some of the hate over the Jem'Hadar attack ship in a while. Why couldn't you do, just from a story perspective, theoretically, if there's these Jem'Hadar ships out there that we're collecting and then people are getting, maybe a group of Ferengis went out, collected a bunch, and now are selling them for a premium gold press platinum price.
Right. Will says it right. A black market items, weapon ships, pieces, parts, whatever. Yeah. That you purchase them, obviously they're going to be bind on, pickup.
Yeah. Okay.
Not bind on equip, because if you pick it up, you don't want to, it's a GPL item. But being able to, say, sneak that extra little Klingon technology, such as maybe some of the weapons that were released recently on some of the ships. I mean, say if a Ferengi gets a hold of it, he's going to want to sell it for the highest profit,
Yeah,
I can see that possibly happening.
Yeah. I like that.
There was people saying, well, they should, maybe eventually, ninja the Jem'Hadar ship in for a price. I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of prices for that if that was an idea that they actually do. But I did like the auction house or the Ferengi traders on Deep Space Nine or the neutral areas selling cross-faction items for GPL. I thought that was very it creates an interesting second economy into the game.
Yeah, they'd have to be really careful on how they did it, because one of the problems has been too many currencies and too many sub-economies. But if done right, and since GPL is sticking around, it seems like something has to be done with it. Now, those are some really interesting ideas.
Now, an interesting twist to tie into that and it would be if, for whatever reason, the Ferengi faction comes along, can you imagine a group of black market traders flying ships to different areas with the ability to buy and sell and trade only in GPL?
Sure.
It'd be an interesting economy twist or an interesting faction to try to run.
Yeah.
And there goes the phone.
And that's Quark calling you right now to tell you about a great deal he has on some lovely used Klingon gear, lightly used. He'll make a great deal, friend.
Yeah.
Should we jump over to the poll for next week, or do you have anything else you want to cover on that?
Yeah, well, that's the only thing I had to cover that I got. There was a couple other emails that we had gotten, but they're for different topics. Again, we always want your feedback from the community. We understand we've been on vacation. There's been, and I've been getting emails off and on about different ideas that we should talk about on the show.
Okay,
but
good.
The community is what builds this. So please send us your emails, stoked@jupiterbroadcasting.com.
Yep, and stoked@jupiterbroadcasting.com. Not some of the other domains that we've heard brought up in the chat room recently. That's where you get that feedback in, and that email address goes to a bunch of us. Now, we do have a poll that we'll be covering on next week's episode, but if the poll doesn't allow you to answer in a way that you want, just send us an email to that email address, and we'll try to cover a couple of those next week, too. So we will need a few emails, so that way we can cover both. But the poll will be this. What are your free-to-play plans? And we've got a few options in here that we'll let you choose, and you can either leave a comment over on the show notes wherever you're watching, or preferably email them to us. Now, Mav, is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up the first episode of 2012?
Nothing directly off the top of my head that I can think of.
Okay, that works for me, man.
That was pretty much what we had. I mean, the emails were thin because everybody was enjoying their vacation in their new year.
I know, right?
And stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely want to hear now what everybody's ideas are about free to play. I mean, really, let us know what you feel, what you think, and what are your intentions?
Yeah.
We're going to take a look at that poll and get your answers.
And if the timing works out, we should have one more episode out the gates before free-to-play hits. So this would be a great moment in time to sort of document how the community feels right before this huge switch happens. So I'm really looking forward to this, you guys. So please, if we can get as many people doing the vote or sending us emails as possible, I really want to try to document the state of the community before this big switch happens. Because I think looking back, maybe if we do make it to December for next year and we're looking back over the year, I think this moment will be a massively significant one for the community. So it's a perfect time to get your voice heard. All right. Well, so just a few pieces of business before we head out of here. STOked is live on Saturdays over jblive.tv at 11 a.m. Pacific. We then release on Tuesdays in the morning in just about any format you could want for mobile devices, high definition, whatever it is, even audio only for you commuters. And you can find RSS feeds that go with all of those formats as well over at Jupiter Broadcasting. Just look for any post of STOked and you'll find them in there. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of STOked, and we'll see you right back here next week.
Make sure you plug the pole there. I'll forget it.
Here we go, it's community feedback segment. It's time. And welcome to... Oh, what are you doing with your arm up there?
I'm turning you down. It was like, sorry.
Also in community feedback, last week Jeremy was on the show and he asked you, what the F would you do with some F and gold press latinum? And boom! You send in your answers and we're going to answer them in community feedback.